the lane. 15-10. Touchdown, Chargers. All right, we're back at it with another episode of Chargers Weekly. As always, joined by Matt Money Smith. Buddy, I feel like we just did this. We did.
Oh, we did.
Just did this on Sunday.
Yeah, we did.
Not much has changed, but just a lot of excitement from fans with regards to the class. And also, we were taping it during the time where I think undrafted free agents were starting to be finalized as well. So that's maybe something we can get into today, as well as some questions from the fans.
Yeah, and look, I think a big part of it is how much you consumed it. So a huge thank you to all of you for streaming and downloading and rating and commenting. That ultimately is why we're here today. So I mean, it was a very popular pod. It was very popular YouTube episode. So thank you. I think that's I'm not trying to climb up here on Mount Pius and kind of one up you, Chris, but. Yeah, I think we both feel the same way. We're very thankful that all of you consume this pod, and it means a lot to us. And it's something we do because it's fun, but to know that you all enjoy it means a heck of a lot to us. So thank you for doing that. And ultimately, that's why we're here, because it was our most popular pod and YouTube episode of the last, 6 months or something. So thank you.
Yeah, that's why we do it. We do it for the fans. And I tell you what, you guys step up. We were going to talk about, we are going to talk about J.K. Dobbins and Nick Hardwick and Coach Devin. They spoke Monday at the podium. So get away from the draft stuff just a little bit. But I thought that we would reserve like a little bit of time for questions. So that's why I posted it this morning thinking like, hey, we get a few, and we got a ton. So we'll start with Monday's pressers. And J.K. Dobbins is a guy, Money, that you mentioned about a month ago and said, hey, if this is a player that they can acquire, it could be a huge boom for the Chargers. And the fact that they drafted a running back in the 6th round, I think tells you that they're pretty comfortable with J.K. and Gus being the 1-2 punch initially to start. And we finally got to hear from J.K. We'll play a clip in a second, but any thoughts about what he had to say, Money?
He looks great. I mean, you see how swole he is, how he is a big physical back. And I just pulled up, the free agent signings. And when you see Saquon, who has had serious injury concerns throughout his career, he's an exceptional back, but he is also had very serious injury issues. 3 years, $38 million. Josh Jacobs, 4 years, $48 million. And I know all of these are a little bit different. It depends on how the money is guaranteed and what's paid up front and all that sort of stuff. But, Derrick Henry to Baltimore, Tony Pollard to the Titans, DeAndre Swift on $25 million to the Bears. Like, this is an incredible opportunity for the Chargers to really get value. It's an opportunity for JK. And as he said in his presser, knowing what this offense is, very comfortable working in tandem with Gus Edwards, very comfortable with Greg Roman's play calling, like to the tune of 6 yards per carry. This could be a home run, an absolute home run sign. And look, I mentioned all those contracts because what are they? They're multi-year, heavy guarantee up front deals. I'm not saying those guys aren't going to run their tails off, but they got paid. That's the deal that JK wants next year. He's looking at that Josh Jacobs 4-year. I guarantee it. That's the one he's circled. 4 years, $48 million. That's what I can get next year if I can put together what I know I'm capable of putting together, because I've already done it. I've already done it to the tune of double-digit touchdowns and 6 yards per carry.
That added motivation is huge, and he doesn't lack confidence. This is him talking about his Achilles injury.
I'm 100% now, and it was like a walk in the park. It was like a sprained ankle. It was very easy, because I had the knee. The knee was pretty hard, and the Achilles was, I would say it's easy, just because that's just my mentality, and it was pretty easy to me.
So, buddy, he alluded to this as well. There's a difference between him saying he's 100% and the coaches. He went through that in Baltimore, but the fact that we're talking about J.K. Dobbins coming off an Achilles injury on May 2nd and him thinking that he's 100%, that bodes very well for training camp and beyond, man.
The super interesting thing for me was him talking about the knee and how he didn't injure it a second time. I was not aware. I thought it was an injury to the same knee, but he said, no, it's just scar tissue that wasn't healing right. So they had to go in and clean it out. And that was something he wanted to clarify. It's like, it wasn't a second knee injury. I started running. It didn't feel right. They took a look at it, realized there was some scar tissue that didn't look quite right. So they cleaned that up. And then he came back at the end of the year and picked up, right where he left off, 120 yards per game, had a big game in the playoff that they ended up losing, their first playoff game, and then comes back feeling like, all right, here we go, pops the Achilles. And look, he's young. This is not 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers trying to come back from an Achilles injury. This is not Kobe Bryant, in year 16 trying to come back from an Achilles injury. This is a young, still has a giant, incredible opportunity of a career ahead of him. Body is going to heal as an old man with old bones that's got a fracture in his shoulder right now that's driving me crazy because it doesn't want to heal. You don't heal the same way when you're old. You heal a lot differently when you're in JK's position. So I'm very excited about it. I really am. I think it is. He is. I know this could be seen as Charger bias and homerism, but he has the potential to be the best running back in the league. That is how talented he is. He is incredibly talented. He's so explosive and powerful if he is healthy. And in this system, with a commitment to the run that this coaching staff and these play callers are going to have, he has got an incredible opportunity ahead of him. And it's why we've been talking about it for months. This is the guy you want to take a flyer on. I know they're not going to spend big in free agency. And this was all when the salary cap situation was a mess. They didn't have any money. And it's like, well, this guy makes too much sense to take the flyer on. And I'm just so over the top that they did.
Yeah. So pencil those guys in, I feel like, for running back 1 and 2 right now and interchangeable. But the rest of the running back room, Isaiah Spiller, still a young guy, Money. Vidal, is it Vidal?
It's Vidal. So my mistake. I even put the comment on the YouTube. I felt terrible. I have a friend I grew up with named Vidal Singh. So I think either that or Vidal Sassoon because I'm old. But you see Vidal and it's just Vidal. Exactly. I don't have any Vidal Sassoon and I got the dry look going right now. But so going back and watching and actually listening to those highlights, because me, I can't possibly stomach listening to other play-by-play guys who are so much better than I am. But yeah, it's everybody called him Vidal. Which Vidal, but Vidal, Kamani Vidal. Whatever he wants it to be is what it's going to be. Unless you're Dan Gadzuric, because you don't get to be Dan Gadzuric for 4 years at UCLA and then get to the Bucks and all of a sudden you're Gadzuric. That I can't do. All right,
I can't figure that one out.
That's not okay. Same with Monty Ball. You can't be Monty Ball at Wisconsin and then all of a sudden you get to the league and it's like, yeah, by the way, my name's Monte. It's like would have been nice 4 years ago.
Tyrod and Tyrod. That was another one we had to deal with in Los Angeles for a little bit.
We got that. We had to wear that. It's like, come on, man. Give me that 10 years ago. Give me Tyrod 10 years ago and we're good. There's muscle memory in my brain.
I feel like, buddy, Spiller is the guy that really has a lot to prove this year. Coming in, he's got a new coaching staff. He's got 2 running backs who are very familiar with the system, a guy that they drafted. So Spiller, a lot to try to prove this offseason in training camp to make this team.
And it sucks for him because he should have had opportunities. It's inexcusable that the last coaching staff did not give him opportunities last year when the season was lost, the year before in week 18, instead of running Austin Eckler and playing Mike Williams, who gets a back injury when the game didn't count. That should have been an Isaiah Spiller game. Give him every carry and let's see what he's got, instead of giving him 1 or 2 or 4 or 5 here and there. So he is someone that should fit into what Jim Harbaugh wants to do. He is a big back, and he is still young. So there is no reason to think that this running back room is settled. It looks like it is, especially with the style of running that Kamani Vidal has. He's small, he's powerful, he's thick. Like it looks like a fit. And remember, I think the interesting thing is going to be, where is Ben Mason? Is Ben Mason is he a tight end? Because they said he's going to be doing everything. So is that part of the tight end room? And now we're talking about Disley, Hurst, Mason, and then it's a fight for that 4th tight end with Stone, Smart, and Parham. and that allows there to be 4 running backs, or is it 3 running backs, a fullback, and that's where Mason fits in, because you still can only carry 53 players, and
exactly.
It's hard to imagine 4 running backs and Ben Mason if he's considered a fullback.
And then wide receiver is a whole nother, equation with is Darius Davis just a kick return or punt returner solely versus, do you carry 6 wide receivers? We'll get into the wide receivers.
I saw there were a lot of questions about that. So
yeah, a lot of wide receiver questions. One of the things that I think fans took note of when Joe Alt was drafted was Coach Harbaugh's comments about the offensive line. And first off, I love that he called them all offensive weapons. Like, we consider offensive linemen weapons. But he said the best 5 are going to play. And he mentioned Trey Pipkins as being right now one of the best 5 on the team. So he confirmed Rashawn Slater is going to be left tackle. We will just put Joe Alt at right tackle right now. Yeah. So Trey Pipkins by default.
And put Zion Johnson at left guard.
And we put, exactly.
And Bradley Bozeman at center. It's that is all. There is one position up for grabs, it feels like.
Yeah. And Trey Pipkins, Jamari Sawyer right now, probably the 2 competing for that. Coach Devlin talked about Trey Pipkins and just the qualities that he sees in him as a player.
I think he's big. He's athletic. I mean, he's a people mover, what I've seen on tape. He's smart.
So, buddy, it's interesting because, listen, we've seen Trey develop as a 3rd-round pick all the way back in 2019, and this could be a move for him for the better, frankly. Stay on the offensive line as a starter potentially. A lot of time before trading camp, but maybe Trey moving inside could be a thing.
Like we said, it's the one spot on the offensive line that is completely up for grabs. And whether that's fair to Jamari Sawyer or not, Jamari's fine because he's versatile, right? He can play left, right tackle. He can play left, right guard. So you need to have someone like that on your roster because injuries happen. So, but is he one of the 5 best? Because of the situation that they didn't draft the center, they do have an undrafted free agent in Bucky Williams who played a couple years at DJ's alma mater, Appy State. That's an all Sun Belt performer. I don't quite know, I should actually just kind of click on his profile to see what his size is. 6'2", 304. So Bozeman's big. I think that's the one thing, and he said it there, right? That Trey is, you're talking about someone who's 6'6", 315 to 320 pounds, not necessarily built like a guard. Those guys tend to be a little bit smaller, a little bit heavier, for context. Zion 6'2", just about 6'3", a little over 6'2", 6'2 and a half, 320 pounds. You're talking about a little more compact, a little bit more of a people mover, as opposed to that length to use your punch and your reach to keep those edge rushers off of you. So will it work? I don't know. But the one thing is, like, when you look at Bozeman, he is not your average center. Bozeman's 6'5". He is 6'5", 320, and that was in talking to some of the coaches about, hey, how's this center? Are you guys gonna, and this was before the draft. I was asking about, how much is center in play? What does the Bozeman signing mean? Is that just sort of the Will Clapp position to have that backup, and you're going to find a center out there kind of thing? And basically what I was told is essentially what you heard about Trey. He's a big dude, and he can move forward. So we got to shift the paradigm is shifted on the offensive line for the Chargers. Yes. It's no longer going back, it's going forward, and for the majority of the time. So that's something to remember, is that the pass pro is going to be, in the hopes of the coaching staff, a lot easier for these guys because they're going to be so dominant running the ball, and you're not going to have, like we've seen for the last 7 years, guys with their ears pinned back coming after you and just pass rush, stack in the box, don't honor the run, don't think you can run it because you can't. That's going to change. And I think that's where the whole, are you going to be all right in pass pro at guard when they're running all these stunts inside and you're trying to keep up with it? And that was the other thing that Coach said about Trey. He's very smart. That's the thing about guard, is you've got a lot of stunts happening. You've got to keep track of where all these guys are going. Are you teaming up with the tackle? Are you teaming up with the center where you're double teamed? So it's a much different position for Trey, but he's big, he's strong, and as they said, he's smart. So there's no reason to think he can't pull it off.
Yeah, and on the other side, Zion, and Coach Devlin had some nice things to say about Zion as well. I think it comes down to coaching too, buddy. Just this staff is completely different from what we've seen the last few years in terms of what they want to do, how they want to do it, and coaching is going to be a big deal. And like you said, the paradigm has shifted across the offensive line. So Trey Pipkins as a guard, hey, man, I'm for it if it works. Kurt McIntosh asked where will Alt start. We think right tackle, and then he asked about Pipkins. You just answered that question. Let's get into some of them. We have some really good
I would
ones.
say, by the way, I'm looking – don't be surprised. Post June 1st with cuts, as teams are trying to put their 53 together, do not be surprised if there's another guard that's brought in. I'm looking at the availables right now. You got Dalton Reisner, Justin Pugh, Vaitai is out there. You've got guys that have played a lot. And I think the question that you then, Wyatt Davis, the question you have to ask is the old Bill Parcells. Are they DIs or are they viable players? Are they development inhibitors? So you can't get your young guys out there that are probably better, but you just trust a vet because the vet's done it, but maybe they're not as good of a player and you'll never know. Now the young player can't get on the field sort of thing. Or, and that would be like in the case of Slater. Or are they legitimately better options? So that these, even the wide receiver room that now has 7 players, not including the undrafted free agents, they're still, look, we just read it, right? And we'll get to it, I know, but Tyler Boyd was just in for a visit. So they're still looking.
Yep. Here, this is a good question that goes right into the offensive line. Most likely UDFA to make the roster. And the first guy that stuck out to me, Money, and I'm sure you looked at this list, but Carson Barnhart from Michigan, the guard, somebody that Jim Harbaugh knows very well. Just another competitive player that's familiar with Harbaugh. And I think that interior, there's going to be a lot of good competition across it. And we know that injuries occur in the NFL, and you need to have the requisite depth at these positions. You mentioned Jamari Sawyer and his versatility, the ability to play tackle, having a guy like Joe Alt who could step in at left tackle if need be, Trey Pipkins who could, if he's a guard, he could play right tackle in a pinch. So the interior of the offensive line, we heard Coach Harbaugh talk about Jordan McFadden as a potential center. That's another guy that you could just add to the competition. But Barnhart from Michigan, that was the one name that stood out to me. I'm sure you have a couple as well.
For me, there's one that is one, and 1A would be Akeem Dent, just because of the safety room and that they did not draft a safety, and that they, and there's AJ Finley, but I don't know what the future of JT Woods is, and can this coaching staff bring out of him what we saw at Baylor and made him a 3rd round pick? So that's just, when you look at the cornerback room, the secondary room still needs some help, even with Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart. They added to Robert Kennedy, Thomas Harper. Those guys were added. But to me, it's that safety room that I'd keep an eye on. So Jalen Phillips, but specifically Akeem Dent, that free safety, is the one that I would probably circle as just an opportunity, right? That opportunity is there for him to snatch up one of the 53.
Alex Avila, question mark, safety depth. So you just addressed that. But how about out there?
See who's still out there, by the way. Let me see.
Like a guy like Justin Simmons is still out there. I don't know what he's going to command, but
never know. If he likes what Jesse Minter and Coach Harbaugh are pitching him, because he can't find that deal that's going to pay him what he thinks he's worth, play a year. Come on over, play a year, and go on out and make a bunch of money. Yeah, Simmons is out there. Eddie Jackson, Marcus May, Quandre Diggs. There's still Jamal Adams. We know that's more of a box safety, obviously, which is where Derwin's going to probably play most of the time. Tashawn Gibson. I mean, there's still a lot of safeties out there. Adrian Amos, John Johnson, Keanu Neal. So, yeah, I mean, there's, like we said, there's still second wave of free. And that's something that Joe Ortiz had mentioned to us as well, that, we're signing guys. There's still going to be free agents that are added to this team. That's still happening. So the draft is one piece, the undrafted free agents is another, and there are still going to be veterans that are signed that we have had our eyes on that will be part of this team when the 2024 campaign starts.
All right, flock with me 1, 2, 3. I know hindsight 2020, but hypothetically, why didn't we do like Arizona? And if tackle was such a big issue for us to address that via free agency or trade before the draft, leaving us to take Nabers at 5 or trade back for, let's say, Rome or a top corner. Thanks, guys. Love the show.
Because you can't; those players aren't available. That's why. I mean, tackles are different. They're even more different than wide receivers. Tackles never hit the market. Remember, Laramie Tunsil was traded for 2-1s, an offensive tackle from Miami to Houston. That's how badly Bill O'Brien needed to solve that problem. Now, you might be able to.
I was going to say real quick. I'm sorry, buddy. Trent Williams, it was such a disaster in Washington that he had to get out of there. So that's such a
that's a trade. And I know he wrote trade in there, but it so rarely happens. So yes, if you're trading for a tackle, you don't have your one. It's gone. It's totally gone. And so I'm looking like extension. Yes, Jonah Williams. He's good. If he was great, Cincinnati would have never let him go if he was great. Same thing with Orlando Brown. Orlando Brown the Chiefs traded a 1 for him and did not want to pay him because he wasn't great. And tackles want money for just being average that pays them as though they're great. That's what the problem with that market is I'm going through like Luminor signed a 2-year, $14 million deal with the Giants. We've seen enough of that guy to know, come on, man. Like that's why you draft tackles. Tackles, elite tackles do not hit the free agent market. Rashawn Slater just had his 5th-year option picked up. He's going to get paid. He's going to get the Penei Sewell deal. That's going to happen before the start of the season.
Plus, Joe Alt's almost 6'9". He's 21 years old. And I would argue, it's not even really an argument. I think he's better than any potential tackle you could have traded for or
not
signed
even close.
To free agency. And it's not even close.
Not even close. And the money, you're going to pay him $6 million a year. Not Jonah Williams got $15 million a year to be average. Joe Alt's going to get $6 million to be exceptional, we think.
And Muddy, I don't want to put any words in flock with me 1-2-3's mouth, but I think it just goes back to the wide receiver. They Rome and Nabers. I do think fans still were wondering, like, man, we could have got Nabers, we could have got Rome. But again, it goes to the example of, would you rather gotten a tackle in the second round and gotten Rome or Nabers? No, because there was no tackles available. You got the best possible tackle, and in my mind, a wide receiver who's hand in glove fit for Justin Herbert, someone that can get open, who could separate, who's an exceptional route runner, perhaps the best route runner in the draft, and you plug him into this offense, right?
We've just seen it too often. We have, and I know those three, and I believe in those three. I think they're all going to be incredible wide receivers for a long time. Franchise changing wide receivers in Odunze, Nabers, and Harrison. I believe that. However, year in and year out, we see it. Whether it's just take your pick. If it's DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, the later receivers raised that Rashee Rice last year. I believe that Ladd McConkey is a first-round talent wide receiver. It will not only will it not surprise me, part of me expects it, that he is going to lead rookies in receptions. I believe that. I think there is a very good chance that he could end up, just because of the way he fits with how this offense is going to operate. I could totally see him leading all rookies. And it's just the same way that Puka Nacua fit. Puka landed in the perfect place for him. The way that they wanted to use him, the offensive scheme. And the fact that Cooper Kupp was hurt, so he became a 1. Like, there's just, I think still being fixated on the whole Nabers thing is, it's not going to change. the Joe Alt is a Charger. Like, there's not going to be a trade between these two teams that somehow brings Nabers here. So trying to relitigate how they should have drafted or what they should have done does you no good, because if you're right, you're not going to want to. You don't want to be right. Charger fan, if you're a Charger fan, you don't want to be right about this. You don't want to have the "I told you so." That does nobody any good. What you want is Joe Alt to be the best right tackle, he and Slater to be the best tackle tandem in football, and say, yeah, that makes sense. That's the way they wanted to build this team, and it makes sense to have two dominant tackles because you can do a lot of damage with that. Just look at what Detroit did.
Nabers, Daniel Jones and Drew Lock throwing him the football. Rome Odunze probably entering camp as the number 3 option behind Keenan and DJ Moore. You look at the other wide receivers drafted in the first round, there's guys that are ahead of them. I think Marvin Harrison, the only exception to Ladd McConkey being like a guy who's going to catch like probably 75 to 80 balls.
Yeah. He's going to have a big year. He's going to have, I hate saying this, but I feel like I have to, and I don't have to, but I just feel like I want to, and I'll alert freezing cold takes. And God knows I'm popular over there with one particular position I took a while ago, but I did not like the body language of Malik Nabers. I just didn't like it, man. I didn't like his demeanor. I didn't like the way he seemed very pouty to me. He seemed pouty when he got picked by the Giants. He seemed dispassionate and indifferent at the presser. I don't want that. And what was he doing when he was out here? What was the biggest thing that happened for Malik Nabers when he was out here? Shopping for houses.
Yeah.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Sorry, just not interested in you. Not interested. I keep going back to the same phrase that Jim Harbaugh shared. What's good for the hive is good for the bee. And I don't think he's a what's good for the hive guy. So not in my interpretation of the way he has behaved since being selected by the Giants. So no, thank you. I'll take Joe Alt over that guy 8 days a week and twice on Sunday.
Yeah. There's no
you
doubt.
don't have to touch it. It's okay. I'll wear it, Chris. I'll wear it.
I was just going to say there's no doubt if you saw Malik Nabers come out of the van to talk to the GM and the head coach,
ridiculous.
How like he didn't look like he was that happy to be there.
No.
And when they asked him about, I told you this a couple of weeks ago on the pod during the combine. He said they got to fix that quarterback situation in New York. He said that like preemptively before it even was a thing that he was going to be drafted to the Giants. So yeah, that felt like a weird situation. Like he wanted to be maybe a pick before in LA or somewhere else.
And for what I believe was the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So I'm good. I'm beyond happy with Alt. See him get out of that SUV and tower over Jim Harbaugh, former starting quarterback in the NFL. Made him look like a child. Great. Sign me up. Let's go.
Speaking of the wide receivers room, Chris G. And there's a lot of these questions. Okay. So maybe we can use this as the example. How do you think the wide receiver room will shake out between who makes the roster and how many, especially if they add a vet? Last episode, I thought it was interesting when Money suggested Davis could be on the bubble. You go for it, brother, and then I'll pick up.
With Darius Davis, sorry, my phone was exploding for my daughter. Wanted to make sure it was no emergency. She's just harassing me. So give that to me again. I'm sorry, Chris. That is my great mistake. I ignore my phone unless it's one of the kids because it's on do not disturb, but it just came through.
The kids take priority. Chris G, how do you think the wide receiver room will shake out between who makes the roster and how many, especially if they add a vet? Last episode, I thought it was interesting when Money suggested Davis could be on the bubble.
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of bodies in there, and we believe in those 7th-round picks. And I think Brennan Rice can be special. Cornelius Johnson fits in with exactly how Jim Harbaugh wants his wide receivers to work in tandem with the offense as a whole. He's a heck of a blocking wide receiver and a good 50-50 guy and a red zone target, a big-bodied wide receiver. So you get those two with Quentin and Joshua and obviously McConkey, and now you're at 5. So that's where the Darius Davis part becomes interesting, because I don't know for a team that's probably going to be one of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL. I don't imagine you're carrying more than 5 receivers. So it certainly gets interesting, and but now that can change because of what's happening with the kickoff rule, where it does make sense to designate one spot as a returner, because you're going to go from 15% kickoffs returned to 90% kickoffs returned, and you want that explosiveness. And do you want to expose Ladd McConkey to do you want to expose him to the hits
I'd
on
say
the
no.
returns? So that's the thing. Is Palmer, to me, Palmer, Johnston, McConkey, Rice, I think are locks. And then it probably comes down to Cornelius Johnson. And what if they signed Tyler Boyd? He was just out here for a visit. What if they signed DJ Shark, who was just out here for a visit? I could totally see them wanting to add a veteran to this group as well. Boyd was majority slot, but I think the Shark, the Zay Jones, those outside receivers are certainly the guys that play predominantly on the outside. Those ones are interesting. And we know they like plucking guys from Carolina that were in miserable situations. So they already got Hayden Hurst and Bradley Bozeman. Why not DJ Shark as well? So that'll be interesting because they're not going to carry 6 wide receivers. I just don't. They could carry 5 and a returner, but I would be floored if they're committing 6 of the 53 to that position.
Yeah. The beauty of this conversation is that they don't have to make a decision about how many wide receivers and who it's going to be until late August. So a competition. Like I'm on the record. I think they absolutely need to add a veteran because I don't think Cornelius and Brendan should be the only wide receivers pushing Quentin and Joshua. Like I do think you need a veteran in there to just have the wide receiver room a little bit more complete in terms of competition. Like this is what Jim Harbaugh wants. And if DJ Chark is out there, Tyler Boyd, Odell was in Baltimore last year.
Right.
I don't know if Odell's going to Miami or not, but like throw him in there, throw in another guy. MVS. I know he dropped some balls in Kansas City, but he also made some clutch plays for Kansas City. So I would 100% add another veteran wide receiver to this room. And I think the relationship between Ryan Ficken and Darius Davis, keep in mind, for as poorly as last year went across the board, the 2 highlights from the draft class, Thule and Darius Davis, the second TCU wide receiver drafted, he was electric last year. And I remember the one game against Vegas Money at home where first series of the game, he had like a 50-yard run. So who's to say like Greg Roman can't find a role for him on the offense as well? So as we sit here in May, I know that Jim Harbaugh is going to make sure that everybody feels a little bit uncomfortable about where they stand on the team in terms of, am I going to make it? Am I going to be a starter? Am I going to be a backup? And that's how it should be. So add another veteran and, I don't know. I think Darius Davis makes the team though. I think
I do too. I think returners are too valuable now, but to me, I don't know, you assume all the draft picks are going to make it. That's what you typically assume.
Yeah.
And, that's sort of where the conversation comes in. All right, well, why'd you use a draft pick when you need depth at safety? You still need depth at corner. You still need depth at defensive tackle. You didn't take an edge and you took a receiver there. So you don't expect him not to make the team. To me, and Cornelius Johnson's a little bit different than Brendan Rice. Brendan Rice it's just crazy that he fell. So you assume he's going to perform like a 3rd or a 4th rounder in training camp when he shows up, and you're just scratching your head as to why did this guy fall to the 7th round? So that's sort of why I'm projecting him as a lock, even though he was taken in the 7th. So yeah, it's a great problem to have, isn't it? This is the worst wide receiver room in the league. What are they doing to Justin Herbert? Now we feel a lot better about it. And we're talking about guys that have never taken a snap in McConkey and Rice, joining Palmer and Johnston. But I'm with you. I do think that a veteran's on his way. I'd be very surprised as I'm going through the wide receivers. And you mentioned Beckham. I've talked about Michael Thomas repeatedly. That dude's a big, willing to block, incredible hands receiver that would make sense. Like we said, Zay Jones, DJ Shark, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, just to have that big body X that you can put out there, is comfortable in press, is fast as all get out. Even though the production wasn't really there with the Chiefs, he's still a threat and still made huge catches in big games because he's able to shake free. He's got a huge frame. He's good at catching the ball. And like, that's another one that I could totally see. I think of all of them as I'm looking at them now, Thank you, Warren Sharp, for posting these so I can keep track of them. Yeah, Boyd, Beckham, Thomas, Jones, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, DJ Shark. I think any of those make sense, and you're going to get them at a bargain rate.
Yep. And hey, that's why they have a practice squad too for some of these 7th round picks. If they clear waivers, you put them right through. Yep. So a lot of questions about the wide receivers in free agency. Mr. Bolt asked, "Do you think the team is finalized for next season?" No,
not even
Lightning
close.
McQueen fan: Are the Chargers more likely to add a free agent signing to the cornerback or wide receiver room? We talked about wide receiver. What about corner money?
Corner, I think, is number one. That room still needs a lot of help. To me,
any names that stick out to you? Xavier Howard is the one name that's still out there.
That's, again, it's sort of the old, like we said, the Bill Parcells, development inhibitor. Is it good to have Xavier Howard, or would you rather have Tarheeb still out there playing nickel? So that's what you've got to figure out. How do these guys fit? Do you expect them to be able to pick up on the scheme? It's a complicated scheme, but I would assume everybody's learning at the same time. So it's the perfect time to get, these corners in. Yeah. Adoree Jackson, Stephon Gilmore. It's a very smart corner. Pat Peterson. Who's this JC Jackson? Don't know who that is. So there's
he's already had a stint in Los Angeles.
There's a reason why they're still on the market. But I would expect them. Like we talked about safeties. I think safety and corner, I'd be really, really surprised if one wasn't added from each of those groups. And we already talked about the safeties and Eddie Jackson, Justin Simmons, Marcus May, Micah Hyde, Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams. There's a lot of safeties out there.
This is a great question from Noemi Money. In previous pictures, DJ Derwin James was wearing the green dot. Does this continue through the season, or is there any validity to the rumors saying Junior Colson will wear it even as a rookie? Time will tell, obviously, with Junior Colson and how he picks up a defense that he already knows, how he picks it up at the pro level. But one of the things that we talked about for the last couple of years, Money, was just how much was on Derwin's plate in Brandon Staley's scheme and how it maybe bogged him down a little bit. Like, if this is something where he has to learn a new defense and call the plays, we know he can do it, but is that something you want out of Derwin, or do you want to kind of use him in a different way? Time's going to tell with all this.
To me, it's a question of what you just said. How are you going to use him? Is he going to be all over the field? Is he going to be the strong safety? Is he going to be the nickel corner? Is he, if he's settled into one spot and he's not moving all over the place, going from edge rusher to outside linebacker to strong safety to outside corner to slot corner to free safety, if he's just settled in one place, then it makes sense to give him the green dot. But if you're constantly moving him around and he's got to keep moving around and identify what his responsibilities are for that particular play because he's now in a different part of the field, then I don't think it makes as much sense. It's too easy with Colson. He was the captain of the defense. He was quarterback of the defense at Michigan. It was the best defense in the nation. Every year that he was out there, someone that Coach McDonald said was the best player on the team the year that he had Aiden Hutchinson on his defense. Yeah. So we know what they thought of him at Michigan, and clearly he knows the defense better than anyone on the Chargers right now. He knows where everyone's supposed to be because he's the guy that got everybody lined up, and I firmly believe he's going to be out there. To me, the question is, who's going to be out there with him? And boy, I sure would be excited if they break defensive huddle, snap one, week one, and there's Deion Henley and Junior Colson out there, two freaking missiles that can run sideline to sideline, that can get downhill in a hurry, and in the case of Colson and Henley, pack a punch. Those dudes get to you fast, and they bring some thunder. That is what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that in that competition, those are the two starting linebackers when we watch this team take the field to start the 2024 season.
This is what I love about this type of podcast with the Q&A. We go seamlessly right to another question about the linebackers. The EO guy, both Junior Colson and Deion Henley were drafted in the 3rd round. How much different are the two? And how big is the gap between the two of these players? Thank you.
Well, Junior Colson's bigger. He's considerably bigger. Daion's about 6 feet and probably in like that 220-pound range. Junior Colson's more, he's probably pushing 6'3", 250, 245-ish. So you're talking about someone who's quite a bit bigger, especially for the linebacker position. Daion is more in that current wave of linebacking in the NFL where you're not playing guys that are 240 plus at the linebacker level. You are willing to play guys in the 220s because of the athleticism. So that, I think, just that's the main difference, right? Is the size. Outside of that, they're both incredibly athletic. They're both incredibly fast. They can cover. They can get downhill. They're both aggressive. They both pack a punch when they arrive at the point of attack. So I think those are the similarities, but the differences are the size. And so that's why I think it works, right? Where you could play Junior's your middle and Daion is your outs, is basically with him. So Junior is Kenneth Murray and Daion is Eric Kendricks, is kind of from, going back to last year is what we're talking about.
Yeah. And we know all about Denzel packing a punch. He's one of the hardest hitters that we've seen come around Costa Mesa in the last 5, 6, 7 years.
And I think the thing with those two guys is they're 3-down linebackers with both of them because they can cover. To me, Denzel is probably a little bit more of a 2-down, run stopping linebacker.
Good call.
And he's going to come off in nickel. That just personally, that's what I would think. So it's a great question. So yes, they are very similar, but they're also different just because of the size.
And the fact that he has to ask that question just adds to the perplexing pile of Isaiah Spiller. Like why didn't we see more of Henley last year?
Right. Well, now we know he was hurt, that he had that hammy that he said he just could not shake all year, and he had an ankle that, they never want to tell you during the season that they're hurt because then teams are going to come after you. But when we were at the draft party and we saw him and kind of talked about his season, he pointed out, he's like, I'm so happy I'm healthy. Like, I just could not shake that hamstring injury last year, and still played great on special teams, but maybe that prevented him from practicing and earning his place in the rotation. But I would have, considering some of the coverage issues that they had, it would have been great to see him out there.
Which rookies have the best chance to earn Defensive Rookie of the Year and Offensive Rookie of the Year? This is from Bolt Gang member. Immediately, I think of the second and third round picks as being those candidates, right?
Well, yes. You have 3 rookie quarterbacks that are all going to start day one. Well, at least 2 of them are going to start day one in Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. So they're, of course, always going to have the leg up. But Rashawn Slater should have been in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. That was all pro. Left
They don't want to give it to a lineman.
No. So that's why, unfortunately, but there's no reason why, Joe Alt should not be in that conversation if the Chargers go from one of the worst rushing teams of the last decade to the best rushing team, and they're running behind him all the time, and Justin Herbert throws for 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns, and he doesn't give up but maybe 1 or 2 sacks, then he should be in that conversation. But yeah, the obvious answers are McConkey and Colson. And Colson, if he starts, he's going to 120 tackles.
Well, I was going to say, you laid out the argument for Ladd already, and it's a good one, right? Justin Herbert's throwing him the football, he can get open, right? Colson, if he gets 100 plus tackles, some TFLs, a pick, he could be the quarterback of the defense, and if Jesse Mintzer's defense arrives like we hope it does in year one, he could be a candidate for sure.
Yeah, because there isn't that dominant sack defensive player in this draft. There wasn't. It's why there were 14 offensive players that went off the board before the first defensive player was taken, and Latu at 15 to the Colts. So I guess Latu could be that guy that could maybe get to 9-10 sacks. I could see that. So, but outside of that, the corners, I guess if Quinyon Mitchell or Cooper DeJean with that front in Philly that could create opportunities for them to pick off 4 or 5 balls, you could maybe see that. But outside of that, Terry and Arnold in Detroit, again, solid front there with Hutchinson that can create some opportunities. for him to pile up. I don't see any reason why, and I have not looked at the odds, but I don't see any reason why that, that Colson shouldn't be one. You know what? I'll look it up right now while you find the next question. Let's see what the odds are.
All right, look for the odds, and this is another kind of draft-related question. Hi, Chris. Look forward to the pod drop of you and Money each week. Question: outside of Alt, Ladd, and Junior, which of the later round players do you guys believe will look back in 2 to 3 years and say, "quote Holy cow, what a steal he was"? That's a great question. That's from Donnie.
So sorry, I can't. I don't know what's going on with my brain. I can't do two things at once. So
do the odds first. Do the odds first.
Yeah,
And we'll answer this.
Defensive Rookie of the Year. I was wrong. I thought for sure he'd be one of the favorites. He is not, and understand. I of course spaced on a handful of them. So he is at plus 4,000. I would get on that if I were you people. Why not throw something at that? Throw $100 to win $4,000 on Junior Colson. Rolling the dice that he's going to be the starting Mike and pile up a ton of tackles, a couple sacks, maybe an interception or two. But you've got Dallas Turner on Minnesota at plus 500. Latu plus 650, and then I forgot about the Rams taking both Verse and Fisk, and Verse sliding to them.
Verse is powerful.
Yeah, and when you got Young and Turner on the interior pushing, you've got a chance to get double-digit sacks. So he's at plus 1,000. After that, it's Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold. And I also forgot about Byron Murphy in Seattle, who could do some damage from the inside. But still, plus 4,000, man, I can't. Not allowed to. But you folks, go ahead, man. Get after it. Throw some,
while you're
throw
there,
a little
Money,
something on that.
Do offense. Is Ladd there?
Ladd is there. Yeah. So Ladd is at plus 3,500, and it's, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy. So that's all the quarterbacks. It's going to be really hard to overcome the quarterbacks because one of them is going to be great, or at least very good.
Yeah.
When so just like last year, the idea that Puka Nacua did not win it because C.J. Stroud was so good. But Puka basically had the greatest wide receiver rookie season we'd ever seen, and he still couldn't win it because there's always going to be a quarterback probably that raises his hand.
All right, let's answer this question. You want
All
me
right,
to read it again?
my mistake. Let me get it again.
Outside of Alt, Ladd, and Junior, which of the later round picks do you guys believe we will look back at 2 to 3 years and say, holy cow, what a steal he was?
I'm going to go with the guy that I didn't know and have gotten to know now since we did the pod on Sunday, and that's Tarheeb Still. I think he could end up being their starting nickel. He's a good-looking player, man. So that's the one to me that I think Aboigbe is more of a even though he had the production, the sack production, I think he's going to end up being more of a point of attack, free up the linebackers type of linemen. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of the eye-popping box score production from him. But Tarheeb Still's a good-looking player now, man. I'm sorry. I think he could win that nickel. I think he could end up being the starting nickel day one. I would not be surprised. So that would, to me, that one, and then the other obvious one is Brennan Rice, just because we don't know what's going on there. What happened with why he fell when you think about his production and being able to look. However you want to chop it up, when you can put together 12 touchdowns in a single season, that's special. That's pretty special. If you can put 6 tugs on the board as a receiver. So that to me is impressive as well. So that won't be surprising. But yeah, I'm gonna go Tarheeb Still. How about you?
Yeah, I'm glad we have different ones. I'm gonna go Cam Hart. The freaks list intangibles. I couldn't get out of my mind the Richard Sherman wide receiver turned cornerback comp, and the fact that he has his DB's coach from Notre Dame with him in Los Angeles. I think that maybe the learning curve for some of these rookies, and that goes for Junior Colson as well. The fact that you could bring in players who have familiarity with some of the coaching staff, I think is a big deal. But Cam Hart's just his numbers and his freakish athleticism, and maybe what O'Leary and Minter can do with a guy like that. It's intriguing. We don't know. Still, the more I look at Still too, and I think I mentioned this last week, but Ortiz says he was scouting some of the other Maryland DBs, and he couldn't tell who was who at points. Because keep in mind, like the Terps have had some high draft picks in that secondary in previous years, so still is very intriguing, especially at nickel. But
the thing with Cam Hart that I would say, Chris, to me, Cam Hart is more of a not 2024 pick. Someone who's still in talking to some people after and asking their opinions on, hey, why did this guy slide? It sounds like he's still kind of got to learn how to play corner. All of those he's a traits player. You get him in. Let's see if we can coach him up to be a corner and to be able, to locate the ball, to understand, to not get handsy, but instead try to get comfortable taking your eyes off your man and being able to turn around while still knowing where he is without getting hit. So I think that's the one thing about Cam is I would not be frustrated if he doesn't see the field a lot this year. I think that pick in the 5th round is more of that, hey, let's worry about 2026 with this guy. Let's get him in here and let's coach. Let's earn our money as coaches and let's coach him up to be a corner because he's still got a little bit of a ways to go on that front.
Which speaks to what Donnie's saying. 2 to 3 years from now, maybe he figures it out and he's a player and a consistent starter. Maybe. Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Money. We answered a lot of them. Is there a position group? Yeah, we answered that one. We answered that one. Someone asked about Corey Linsley. I wouldn't count on Corey Linsley coming back to the Chargers.
I think he's retiring. That would be my guess.
Yeah. 3 spots open. What free agents do you think they will sign? We talked about corner. We talked about wide receiver.
Corner,
we
safety,
also talked
wide
about
receiver.
Safety.
Yeah, corner, wide receiver, safety. That would be my guess. I think you could probably still add somebody on the offense, on the front of the defensive front. I don't think that's I think it's also best player. Think of it like the draft. It could also be a best player available. Do you need a big body? Do you need a rusher? Do you need someone who can get some push on the line? Is Calais Campbell still a viable, who played in Baltimore with John Harbaugh all those years and played great? Does he have anything left? So there's certainly a handful of players at all positions that Yannick Ngakoue is a pass rush special, as a deep, I'm trying to think of Agba's out there. Who else is here? Yeah, there's a lot of guys that are still on the market for a reason.
Last question. I think we answered pretty much all of them, guys. As always, appreciated, especially last minute questions like this. Worldview matters. What would Coach Harbaugh and Roman likely be looking for in a complete tight end room? And you talked about this at the beginning, but we can dig into it a little bit more, especially tight end 3 and 4 spots, a blocking specialist that can play the Y, an F, or an H type. Now, you talked about Ben Mason maybe being considered part of that tight end.
I think that's who he is.
Yeah.
I think he just described Ben Mason. That's because I think it was Coach Bischoff who said, he's an H. That's what we see him as. However, can play some Y, and he can. So that to me is Ben Mason, is that sort of versatile. I don't think there's anybody being added to the room. They got Zach Hines out of South Dakota State as an undrafted free agent, and he seems to fit. He's that 6'6", 260-pound athlete that you take the flyer on. So to me, that room is done. It's Disley and Hurst that are going to be out there in 12. They'll be the 2 tight ends that play the most. And then I think beyond that, you're talking about Mason and either Parham or Smart, who fight for that last spot, or if Hines can sneak in there as an undrafted free agent.
Last question from Chris Hayre. Money, do you think LeBron James deserves a statue outside Crypto.com?
Got some traction, huh?
Little bit.
Caught on.
Little bit.
Like I said,
say it with your chest, man.
Right. I watched a guy, who was wearing number 8, number 24, and if the game was on the line, he was going 94 feet, dude. He was picking you up at half court. It was not going to be you that was going to get a clean look. And just to see that guy floating on the baseline with a hand on Aaron Gordon, not even part of that play, as Jamal Murray easily went around a pick that Austin Reeves got cleaned out on and took a wide open left elbow jumper to end their season, is just, sorry, dude. It's 6 years of LeBron James, and 5 of them they have finished 7th or worst in the Western Conference. So how is that a success for a team that only counts championships and nothing else? You finished in 7th place or worse in 5 of your 6 years here. I just don't get it.
Yeah, they got some work to do. That offensive board that Aaron Gordon got to late in the fourth.
Yeah, just threw him away like a rag doll. It's like he was the best player of his era. There is no denying that. However, 39, 21 years in, or 22, 21 years in, it's clear you get gassed by the end of the game because you're old and your legs are tired and you got a bunch of minutes on you. So handing over 3 years and $162 million, like the stories immediately posted as soon as he was done, as soon as the Lakers were eliminated, and drafting Bronny to appease him just did not sit well with me. I'm like, I'm sorry, you're not Kobe, you're not Magic, you're not even Pau, who was here one half. Think about, this is the Chargers pod, so I don't want to get. I'll just add this. I'll end on this.
It's a footnote. It's a Laker footnote.
Pau Gasol played, and he's, I worked for the team when Pau was there. He's one of my favorite players I've ever been around. One of the most benevolent, gracious, just gentle giants. A sweetheart of a guy. He was here for 6.5 years. It felt like 20 years because of how important he was and the impact that he made when he was here. So he basically played for the Lakers 3 months more than LeBron has. And you got 3 trips to the finals, 2 championships, number 16 in the rafters, as it should be, because he felt like a Laker. He felt like
3 consecutive trips to the finals.
Yeah.
And he came in 2000, he came midway through the year.
Right.
And like him and Kobe, like boom, the instant chemistry, 3 straight trips to the finals. And he also was going second round in the playoffs, and after his 3 straight trips to the finals. So I'm with you. I'm with you on a lot of this.
Yep. Call me a LeBron hater. I don't care. I don't like him. Sorry.
I said, this is a Chargers podcast, but you know what, buddy? There was a Lakers playoff series, a Clippers playoff series, and a Kings playoff series in addition to the NFL draft. So there's a lot going on.
So how about that? Yeah, and that's why Jim Harbaugh has got to come to the rescue. So we're doing this on Thursday morning. I'll have the radio show this afternoon with Petros, and we both come up with a story that kind of drives something. And so my thing today, after watching last night, I'm like, how did we become the city that can't win in the postseason? How are we, all show and no substance, all sizzle and no steak? You got the Dodgers that gotten bounced in the first round the last 2 years by Arizona and San Diego. You got the Chargers, who have a 28-0 lead and can't knock off the Jaguars to advance to take on the Chiefs. You got the Rams, who were close but couldn't get a win in the playoffs. You got the Lakers that have gotten, bounced this year in the first round. Clippers are going to get bounced in the first round. The Kings got bounced in the first round. Like, this is Los Angeles. We should not be the place that's got these teams that are one and done in the playoffs, and every single team cannot advance. It drives me crazy.
Jim can change that.
Yes.
Harbaugh's the type of guy
Jim.
who can change that energy. So, guys, thank you for your questions today. Like Money said at the top, it's a joy to do this because you guys are such a big part of it. And it's May 2nd, man, and we have just as much interest as it would be like week 6. You know what I mean?
Oh, we're gonna have some new vets on the team next week for this pod. I guarantee it. Guarantee it.
Yep. All right, so we'll see you next Thursday for Money. I'm Chris. This has been Chargers Weekly. Have a good one.